Yeah.
Okay, let's start. Okay, hi. We're going against our better judgment and we're making a vertical film right now to document the Dunkunsthalle show. It's called America Runs. It was curated by me for Rachel Rawson in 2023. These are the artists. Just keep filming. Amelia is doing the filming. These are the artists in the show America Runs. Some of the artists are actually inside, so let's go see them. Here we go. Okay, so we enter the show. These are gallery people coming to see the show.
Yes.
What is your impression of the work in the show?
I mean, we came in very late, but I'm really amazed.
Did you come in because of the sign said Kunsthalle?
No, we found out about them, I think. Yeah.
I love your earring. Did you get this earring? Well, you're in the video right now. Is it okay?
Yes,
Wow, it's very cool. Well, I'm glad that you came. And what is the difference with the lights on and lights off?
It's quite a difference.
Okay, good.
It's like this, it makes sense. Before I was like, okay, this lighting, it's like, could be concept.
I feel like the work works in both contexts, but I do think that the lighting is very important in the show. I was carrying the show, so we're making a little video before we deinstall. But thank you guys for participating. I'm Joey.
Maxi.
Chris, nice to meet you too.
So last night.
This is the last one. And this work is the work over here of Bella Carlos. So these are some of the first works that we were thinking about including in the show. Bella's work is like their masks here. We had to bend special little things for them. These masks are included partially because of the material of what's one that you can really see the silver on. So these are partially included because of the solder that is using to connect the stained glass. The fact also that glass light passes through, but also that these are all, they're drawings in a way. Here, maybe we can ask Bella to be a little bit more specific. Here, Bella, come over here. Bella, hi. We're doing a little recording right now about the show before it goes down, and I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions and explain to you why I included the work in the show. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I was drawn to your work because of the way you're using solder and glass. And I like glass as like a conductivity thing, and solder as something that circuit boards are put together with for all of the electronics, like in Brian's work and stuff like that. But also, there's a way that you're using graphite that reminds me that graphite is like from a rock, a material. The fact that I would never think that there's like a different color here, but that there's like pencil graphite. It's also like a material like metal, or like glass. Anyway, that's just me talking to get why this is in the show, and we'll relate to some of the other works. But can I ask you, how did you first start making the masks?
Oh, well, my mom is a stained glass artist, so I learned the technique of working with stained glass from her. And so it's something that's kind of like a matrilineal knowledge that's passed on to me. So I think of glass as something that's actually quite feminine, which is unique to me because the glass world is actually quite masculine. But
Big heat, like Del Chiguli, big heat and stuff.
yeah, you have to be kind of machismo for it. But for me, it's something that's quite personal and really approachable. Like, I think that glass for me is something that is warm and comforting and something that takes me back to a nostalgic home, sort of.
Is there a religious thing about it too for you, stained glass?
No. I know that stained glass has a lot of baggage, but for me, it's just something that I associate with femininity and motherhood. Yeah.
Wow. And so these are not all of the works in the show are interacting, and you can hear Emmett's in the background. But so these are not the particularly. It's interesting to think about them as motherhood. They seem very like a self-possessed person in them or something, or there's like I don't know how to describe it, but in your writing about it, of like this idea of like being vulnerable, not just vulnerable behind it, but like hiding a shame or like kind of like an armor element.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of care that I think is
I didn't think of it that way.
associated with both. But there's also, I think, a time and place for it, and I think that the care that I bring to the work is something that can be temporal and not necessarily needed all the time. But I think that when I look at the work, it reminds me of a certain feeling that is no longer here, but exists within the object. Yeah.
is a feeling of like being cared for. Like it reminds you of your mother.
Yeah.
Wow. And so what about the electricity and like the kind of like well, they're kind of quite sexy, and the stories are kind of like not exact, you know what I mean? And like the other thing I was always drawn to is these kind of knots. Just why? Just I guess just not to put. I mean, you're already on the spot, but like I'm curious about the knots and the electricity.
Oh, well, knots are really important to me. I think that every single moment can be boiled down to a type of knot, which I guess it's a really logical way of thinking, but I think that it's a diverse metaphor. So a knot could be something that's uncomfortable, needs to be untied, or it could be a structure of them, which is comforting. And so I think that I see knots in things, see knots in people, and I try to emulate that with my work.
It's just insanely beautiful work.
Thank you.
I'm like so happy to be able to include in the show. And thanks. And it's cool. It feels also like an interesting time in everybody's life right now. Or something for you to be in the. I can't speak right now, but I'm like very. It's like I'm very blown away by all of this work and excited to see like the future work or something.
Thank you.
Like I just feel like it's like a lifelong. I don't know. Through time, Well, this is what I'm like when I'm a Virgo rising, but this is what I like when I have to talk to a Virgo. Thank you very much. There's like, yeah. Are you cool with the lighting of the work?
Yeah, I think it's fine. I kind of like the shadow that it casts.
I like the shadow too. I mean, originally, so I was thinking about spotlighting, but then I realized that I think that there's like a zone in this room that's kind of like a lit zone, like a little more Dunkin' Donuts and a little more like strange, you know?
Yeah.
And then the other room can be the spotlight room. So I think that I'm glad that your work like stood up to like the kind of like daylight lighting a little bit or something.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for letting. Thank you. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna go around.
Okay.
We're not even cutting the video.
Okay.
You know, and well, I can also bring you the work back, like I said before.
Okay, thank you.
This is Emmett's work. Emmett's gonna come and talk. Here, Emmett. This is an insane thing, but we're doing it anyway. So, all right. So this. It's just like I don't even know. This is like I don't know how to embarrass you. Step out of the shadow. Okay. This is Emmett. This work over here is the most explicit donut joke in the show. When I went to Emmett's studio and saw all the different work, I was like, oh, this Ouroboros is actually also like a donut. So that this work not only needs to be on the show, but needs to be hung in a way that is like totally frontal to the show. And when the show is open, the spark that happens in this work draws people. And I see people all the time walking on the street and like having to stop because the spark is like so intense and like either come in or don't come into the show. We're doing a really weird video right now that we just Rachel sort of asked for it. So I'm just going to go through and talk instead of just about what I feel about the show, also about like asking you about your work since you guys happen to be here because it's the last day of the show before the install. And everything's recording, right? It's like one. Okay, she's doing it. Yeah. I'm just curious, besides the shepherd's tone, which we can explain the show as a shepherd's tone and operates throughout the whole show, what I'm curious about is specifically what's making the spark and how that's happening first.
So the Spark is
Get close because it's widescreen, so she's not very close.
it's like a 10,000 volt high voltage transformer that's sparking. So essentially the two pieces you see here, the central rotating element and the surface of the worm, are both acting as electrodes. So two halves of a spark gap. And this point, the screw going to the surface of the worm, is the point of least resistance where that electricity can bridge through the air. One part of that high voltage electricity is going through a device called a slip ring, which can conduct electricity through a rotating mechanism, and that's how you get something that can rotate and spark
Right,
at the same
because
time.
normally, gotcha.
Normally it's like in one place.
It's like a brush.
And I was kind of, I really like that technique. I like the physical power of it. So I kind of like physical undeniability.
Yeah.
Like a really physical audio experience. Like, kind of grab someone's head and shake it. Yeah,
Oh yeah. It's like very primal. You can zoom in if you need or whatever. You can see how the lenses change, but it's okay. Yeah, it's very, very primal over there. Hey, how's it going?
And
This is an art gallery, art show. It's kind of a little bit close, but it's open if you want to look around and appreciate the art.
All right, cool. Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I don't mind at all.
Well, thank you.
This is all right. So the spark that's being created here is like it's the same concept as like a welding spark,
yeah, similar.
and it produces also heat, or no?
Yeah, they produce heat.
And how did you make these marks here?
That's also produced by a high voltage process. It's like I took apart a neon transformer and basically put 2 electrodes on the wood, and it burns across the path of least resistance and kind of burns out these patterns.
So, for example, like these two would be like 2 places you put the node.
Yeah.
And then this whole line, it is it connecting, right?
Yeah, no, I have this this whole rig I built with like car battery clamps and these big sticks, so I can kind of grab it and move it around.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And just I think you talk a lot more even about this work and about the shepherd's tone, infinitely ascending, infinitely descending, and the nature of the cycle and the circle of just like circuits in general, but also the donut as like a side thing. But who's this guy again? The knave, right?
Yeah, the knave, which is sort of just the humble person, you know.
It's not a
You or
fool.
I. Also kind of a fool, you know. I like the term knave.
Knave.
But like sort of a foolish character.
And a medieval one, right?
Yeah.
And he's rattling. What's he doing? You're getting really close to this. Just get the
Yeah.
camera so close. Just like see how close you can go on the wide angle. Go to the widest lens, and then see how close you can get it there. Don't zoom in. Just take the widest lens and physically move the thing as close as possible. Yeah. That's the kind of photography. That's what we're looking for. I need like inches away from the artwork. It's not gonna start sparking.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this nave is why is the nave there?
The nave is kind of the representation of just the humble person, or really any person. Kind of the existence of like the individual within, the wider scope of reality.
Thank you.
Because
Thank you, Emma.
there's kind of like, I'd say the main thing with the spark in this piece, it's kind of about like, there's like kind of this idea and like philosophy of Gurdjieff of like the universe being a descending octave between everything unified and nothing existing, which are kind of like one and the same.
Yeah.
And like kind of like physical existence being like this differential that you have to resolve between those two things.
Yeah.
Which is sort of like a spark gap or electricity. It's like a difference trying to be resolved.
Yeah.
There's this potential energy at these 2 points, and they're trying to like even out and like kind of unify with one another.
Of course, yeah.
And
it's weird to think of like, like man is 5, the devil is 6, the God is 7, but it's like spark gaps that there's like, I remember taking a class about infinity, and there's this idea that like there's infinity in between 1 and 0, the same as there's infinity, all the numerals in order.
yeah.
Wait, one more thing. What made you laugh so much when I said parabolic?
Because this is like a really crappy DIY like noise microphone. It's like I don't think it has any qualities like
It's
that.
probably still a parabolic.
But the piece is kind of about really zoomed out scale cosmic reality, time on a cosmic scale beyond human comprehension, and then kind of a human existing within that. And, what do you do with that?
Yeah. Cool. This is insane that we're doing this vertical. I gotta tell you. Can you still see me? Okay. I just want to tell you guys that we're just gonna keep doing it vertical. Emmett, if you're in the audience, you should applaud right now for Emmett. They're applauding right now. Thank you so much for everything. And we're gonna go. We got other artists here. So we're gonna keep going.
You have 10%.
10%.
Yeah.
Emmett, wait. These things here. Are these gonna stay when it's rising?
Yeah.
This will stay. This is controlling the 8 speakers that are here. There's some down there, and there's some up top.
Not right now.
It's not controlling them right now because it's not. Why?
We
Because
set it
the
up
mute
to
is
do a
on?
modular.
Oh, we set it up to do a performance right now. But this is over here. The next thing you see is Kaya's work. Now I could tell Kaya, we're going to treat Kaya just like everybody else in the show. We're going to talk to her about why her work is in the show. Kaya,
Yeah.
this work is all texture work, you know?
The work is called scapula.
This is called scapular hack. So this work, when I put this work, installed the work, there's like a kind of trick in the basic trick. If you stand back, Emilio, for a second too, I'll show it to you. Thank you very much for chatting too. All right, you have a good night. You're staying around, right? All right. Here's the obvious trick here. You think that this thing is kind of like, people will walk up to it, they don't realize that there's like an internal thing that's projecting it. It feels very much like that pillow of ceramics is a screen, partially because it's spotlit. And you would think, oh, if you spotlight something, you can't see the light on it. But in reality, when your head obstructs or whatever, you see that there's a light on the screen, and it's kind of like a scrying moment, like like reflections in like a black screen, or like a black, I don't know, like pillow. What the video that's happening there is also a loop. Okay, explain the video for a second.
The video is really central to understanding the sculpture, I think. It's a video that I took of me on a ride, a roller coaster at the Giglio Feast, the Italian flower festival that happens every June in Williamsburg. And I got really obsessed with this ride where it's like kind of a medieval kind of ride where you're in kind of a metal cage with this kind of like metal net. You're like, and when you go round and round, you can hear everything clinking.
It's a lot like Emmett's work. It's one of the reasons why it's curated here also is to have a connection between Emmett's work and it. Do you know? So Kay was out of town when we installed this work, and made this beautiful shelf for the work. But you know that keeping the sound off. You know how we're doing it in a mechanical way. Should we play the sound for a second?
Yeah.
I'm gonna play the sound for a second on this work. But see, this is like we're doing a secret. So this is a cut off piece of a headphone, and all you do, I think, is take that out.
So that's me having an ecstatic experience on this roller coaster.
And is it a religious festival, the Giglio Festival?
Yeah, I think it's Catholic. But I thought that summer I was having a really insane time, and going around 360 over and over was really important for me to like reset my energies. And actually, I was experiencing another form of going 360 when my friend Mark taught me how to flip somebody using 3 people. And he got really into flipping people like a couple of years back, and he taught us how one night in Prospect Park when we were on mushrooms. And I got really into doing that and like doing it at parties, and it's like really good just to like reset yourself just to go 360 any way you can.
The body flips. So this is
I can't even recognize my voice.
It's a very this was a little too intense to include screaming throughout the entire thing, especially during install. And also since it's tucked here and hidden, it's very hard to like adjust. And the only way we figured out to adjust it is to put this in it, to like almost like a little report. So it wasn't screaming, but with the screaming, I just like that the spikes, that this abstract part of Kaya's work here feels like the audience almost for this internal video. So like if you come a little bit closer, there's a thing here that happens with scale. You want to fix it?
Yeah.
There's a thing here that happens with scale in Kaya's work also that it's happening also in Emmett's work and also in Bella's work. Is this idea that that like you go really close and the screen is actually maybe a huge screen at like a drive-in movie theater, and these are all like the little tendrils, the microscopic tip of a cat's tongue, and these are all like these little taste things, and they're all like moving together like an underwater anemone. They're all like, it's like there's a church element to it, They're all like kind of like congregating and like celebrating, and they also are all coming to a point, like an idea, like they're all like, the ideas are all coalescing, and they're all like kind of coming to like a similar conclusion, a center point, like the point of the spark in Emmett's work, or like the the path of the solder, of the metal solder that makes that kind of like stained glass reality.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement.
Anyway, I love Kaya's work, and it was a very last minute inclusion in the show in some way because it wasn't perfectly done. But Kaya made sure before she left town for a little while to make sure that it was like really perfect and left really great instructions. And the only thing I did was I didn't want to put it on a rectangle, and so I cut this little custom thing for it, which nobody. It's a totally wild sculpt, like thing. When I take it off, you'll see. But not a single fucking person notices it or cares because it's meant to just direct energy to Kaya's work, and I think it actually does it very well. And
It
so
makes
I'm going
it
to pat
float.
myself on the back. It feels like
It makes it
unusual
float. It's
and
like
it makes
invisible.
it float.
Yeah.
A
Even
rectangle
though it's
would be
a weird
less
shape.
important. Yeah, it's weird that something so unique can also be more invisible than something that's seemingly invisible. It's supposed to be invisible. You know what I mean?
And I think about that a lot with technology.
Yeah.
Like how the
It's
new
not a
phones.
one-shoe-fits-all thing.
No, but like whenever they release a new phone, they're trying to make it as invisible as possible. And then like time goes by and you attribute like identity to it as it ages. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Anyway, Kaya, thank you for chatting also.
Thank you.
This is some weird videos. We're at 10%. We're just walking through this. Aren't you guys having a great time in the audience? Chris Lloyd is not here, but I'm just going to say that Chris Lloyd's work are these like paper tapestries, but there are paper works. This is all laser cut and laser etched. These are all with like a plotter printer. I would love to talk to Chris more about what he's doing here. But this work seemed to be really, central, important to the show, partially because of the content, like the snake content being similar to Emmett's snake and the electricity, but also that they're lit in this way, again, of like a revelry moment, like a kind of medieval, like, these are not paintings or drawings exactly, they're almost like banners or flags or like long bolts of fabric. And they're lit in a way that you can really see the texture of the paper. You know, a lot of people who work in a paper like this want to probably make it flat and like as textureless as possible. And I think in a normal lighting, it's probably lit in a way that does make it textureless. But in this room, it's lit in this kind of like in between like it's kind of like sexy street lamp goth club lighting, but also kind of like church like Eye of God kind of lighting. I also love that these things are totally stretched. She's working in a long medium. But if you look down here, this is like also like a totally condensed, pressed image. So the Adam and Eve, obeyed God, or like it's like Adam and Eve disobeyed God, and it's like this crunch thing. It's a chance also to see the architecture of the back of the Dunkin' Donuts, the pool of light on the floor, using the rafters up there. That's why things are all kind of like lit in a different way. If you see where we've left a lot of the tiles, we've left a lot of the stuff. And this kind of main event thing here is Brian Oakes' work. He's still in space. Brian is here also to talk about his work. So Brian's work is making beeps and bops and boops. Also, if you scream at it, it has a slight echo.
7-year-old.
But when we were first installing Brian's work back here, it felt like it should transform the entire room into like, were you saying a video, like that off basement level of a video game?
Like a room you're not supposed to be in like a horror video game. Because of like the way that it kind of like activates like a more liminal space. Before we had the Chris Lloyds up, there was holes in the walls, all the drop ceiling is gone. It just felt like a neglected space that had been kind of like transformed.
And I think a lot of the work does that, but Brian's work is like the most, everything is basking in the light of this kind of like orange light of Brian's work. But like, for example, the sink, looks like a video game sink or some kind of like other space. I mean, a lot of people are around here now.
Partially rendered.
Partially rendered, yeah. And so, the thing that I'm most interested in Brian's work in the show, and I say also it's a heart of the show, is that even though it's a technology full of lights and like beeps and bops, it's essentially a calming, leveling, grounding artwork. Where like Emmett's work is like very frightening and like it's like there's a shock to it and it's like facing the street. This is after you're already in like kind of the hearth. A lot of people in the opening said it was kind of like a campfire. And if there's something about it that is like, originally this show is meant to be in December, and this was like a version of like a burning, Christmas tree or something, also in the center of the space. And the way that each of the custom, microchip boards are spiky is also like, like a natural coral design, or like the nature sometimes also does this. After doing a studio visit with Brian, and I'll ask Brian a question in a second, but I explain why I do this show first. When after doing a studio visit, I saw that at the beginning he was making microchips where you make the custom, something custom in like the microchip. And then I saw that you kind of evolved into this way of doing it modularly, where all of a sudden the microchips were like leaves on a tree or bones on a body, where you then were like, oh, this is about piecing a lot of microchips together and making these arrays. I also wrote something a long time ago about radial symmetry being like this central evolutionary moment where life on Earth moves from radially symmetric to bilaterally symmetric because of our need to have eyeballs. And sea anemones and plants and things that come out of a flower form that are radially symmetric are like a type of intelligence that is a pre-cognizant intelligence. It's brainless intelligence. So seeing this work in kind of like a sea anemone zone, or like an underwater thing, felt like this calming, timeless quality, because time only exists when you actually need a brain to determine point A, point B, I move from here through there. You don't need time if you are radially symmetric. Anyway, there's still a top and a bottom though. Brian, when you put this together, how much of it is coming back to you when you put it? Are you designing what has lights, what has motors, or how much freedom do you have when you're actually like wiring it? Or are you just kind of like, is it like an IKEA box where it's like you've already designed it and now it's like time to assemble it?
It's a combination of both for sure. So all of the standoffs in these pieces, act to separate the boards, but it also distributes power. So everything is very, very calculated. I have like a fully realized 3D model of every one of my works because I design it like entirely digitally before I commit anything to like a physical form. But at the same time, like the way that I wire it up can be altered. There's a lot of room for like, changing the way, like there's multiple different types of LFOs, which is like kind of like clock signals. There's multiple ways that I could wire up like the way the sound kind of flows through, which section is controlling all of the lights, which section is controlling all the motors. So there is still like a fair amount of like leeway.
Do you think of them musically? Or how do you think of them?
I think of them as both musically and visual. Like I think they're kind of both the same component.
Do you think of them like maybe like a chandelier, or do you think of them more like a sculpture? Like what's a related? There was a moment where we were going to put like a Jason Rhodes piece in here because of this idea of like light being from the ceiling and like a messy sculpture. But I didn't even know if that was like a fair relationship to your work because I don't know how you're viewing them exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think of them necessarily as like chandeliers, although like they're definitely visually connected to that, the way they're like sort of hung and like displayed. But for this installation, we tried to like bring them a little bit lower so they could relate more to like the body essentially.
Wait, come over. Wait, Deanna, come and sit. Can you sing one part of one thing in front while the beeping is happening?
Right now?
Yeah. Well, wait, actually, can you sing it right in this light? Just because we wanted to hear it with the beeping. But you have to lean back a little bit. The light is very like this.
What? I've been talking for a while now. You want me to sing a classical?
Classical, something can be short.
What's a good one?
What's a good one? I don't know. Vivaldi?
Verdi.
was about, that was very, very good.
Was it?
Yes.
Oh, it's Du Bist wie eine Blume by, what was it, Schumann? What is it?
What is the
Schumann.
beast? What is it?
Thou art so like a flower.
So like a flower.
Like a flower.
I knew you were going to say something directed at this
To
sculpture.
this freaking thing.
So like a flower.
Yeah, and then it's German.
Thank you for
and
earlier tonight. She sang the most amazing. That was good for you. It was great for you. Everyone else in the room loved it. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon, okay?
Okay, yeah, but you just hit my line.
I'll hit you up soon. We're still doing a video here. You know?
Okay. So I was in that then.
I think it was
Oh, that's fine. That sounds fine. That's good.
recorded. I'll see you on Friday.
Okay,
For sure.
yeah, right.
For sure.
I'll be there Friday.
100%. I'll see you on Friday too.
I'll see you Friday.
Okay.
Congrats.
Thank you again.
Bye, everyone.
There, we got a little song. Because one of the things is that tonight we did a bunch of singing with the sculptures. But Brian went around and undid the audio for the sculpture, which was showed an amazing amount of flexibility, which Brian has done the entire time installing the show, deinstalling the show later. Yeah. So, but you also play music then?
No, not really.
Oh, really?
No. I'm right now. I'm starting to work more. I've been collaborating with musicians, which I have been finding to be like very, very fulfilling and like opening up a new part of this work that I didn't immediately think I would be that interested in. I've been working with Dorothy Carlos to kind of like record some pieces, or she'll come over and like record some work. Dorothy has a performance coming up later this month that I think I'm going to give her some of my work to perform with. But like the first time that she sort of came over and recorded music on one of my pieces, I feel like it really changed the way I was thinking about some of the ways that these could be contextualized.
And interacting with the viewer. Yeah.
Like these ones, this obviously is not interactive in a way that you can go up and touch it or turn any knobs or anything.
Although a couple people banged into it and it's been pretty resilient.
Yeah.
I have to say it's been very resilient.
They're pretty strong, yeah. But it is interactive in the way that like, you know, it's kind of like a mirror that you forget that you're looking at yourself. Because there's samplers. Every section is a system for randomly sampling and randomly playing back audio from the space. So you couldn't really hear it that much because it was kind of maybe a little too quiet to singing, but this was picking up little bits of
and we'll play back the
right
song.
now, and then it's playing it back with like a slight delay, but also it's like spatial. Every section has like a speaker also hidden in it, so there's like sound moving throughout the space.
What it is to me about what he's just saying also is that everything that's alive about Brian's work to me is like low key alive. It's not like, oh, I'm alive. Oh, this thing moved. It's like breathing, you know?
Yeah.
It's like a little sample,
Totally.
a little movement, a little blink.
yeah.
It's like it's about like being alive is like a tone, you know, which also goes back to Emmett's work as far as being like a shepherd's tone that has like an audio illusion of a rising and descending, is this idea of like to be alive is like a kind of tone. And everything he was saying as far as a mirror that you yell back to it also really works with Bella's work as far as like when you have a mask, it's to protect who you are in front of the mirror in a lot of ways. It's to protect who you are in front of other people and change your appearance, but also change your appearance like kind of like in the mirror. There's also a thing about the mirror that kind of goes throughout as far as like, you know, the mirror is what kills Medusa and the snake ultimately. In that like electricity and the Medusa current are, once they reveal the mirror to themselves, that then like is the only thing that can like short circuit essentially Medusa. So that's like one of the things that the mirror does.
Yeah, it creates like feedback, but it
Yes.
also creates like, I'm sure Emmett talked about like the idea of electricity being like magic and like a real form of like witchcraft or something like that. It's something that like has a lot of like invisible force to it, and so it's also like, yeah, it's also magic in that way. It's kind of like the mirror reveals, you know, the man behind the curtain or something like that.
Totally.
Like the feedback, you figure out the system, but it's still like, there's still enough magic that it's still like engaging or something like that. Like,
Well, what's nice about this is that, like, you know, the mirror, like, for example, actually with Dan Graham, when you were talking about earlier, he writes a lot about those glass pieces and catching yourself in a reflection for a second as being like, so elemental to what those works mean.
Yeah.
Is that, like, their chance to, like, see yourself in glass. And they come from for the first time coming from New Jersey into Manhattan and seeing big glass stained buildings, panes of glass, and seeing himself for a second in the pane of glass, and wondering if he could make an artwork about seeing yourself for a second in a pane of glass. And that's how the pavilions really started, about like this moment of recognition and also civic space and all. I mean, they're very deep artworks, but I think that like that's very interesting as far as like it being constantly there, and then you can kind of see it for a glimmer and then it's gone, as being like, yeah, a very like kind of calming and like anchoring piece to the show. Also, just I mean, a special credit of as far as like Dorothy Carlos, when I met, was mentioned Brian's work, and then I kind of put it together that she knew Brian, but I had no idea that she was Bella Carlos's sister as well as twin sister, and that Brian had worked with Bella before. I also had no idea that Brian worked with Emmett, or had shared a studio nearby Emmett's, and it was all very organic, this show, how everything came together. And now we're going to talk to Georgica also, and I'm going to show Anastasia's work. But thanks, Brad. This is just one constant mission. I don't know how this video, and this is Zach, by the way, we just met Zach today. Anastasia just left, and I don't think she's coming back yet. But this piece here is called Sacrum, and a lot of her work is in front of paintings. So originally I was drawn to her work because there are a lot of vines in the work. We decided to light this work with a different spot than the rest of the spots. We're using an RGB spot, so that spot divides into like multiple chroma colors, and it feels a little bit like this is like refracting. You can see like how it doesn't just have the blue line, it's got like a red line and then like a green, kind of green line, and it's because of it's a very specific type of spotlight. This thing, you know, originally she's displayed it before kind of in like a more of an S&M situation above a pillow with like a kind of like black ribbon on it, like a braided ribbon, you know, like the kind of thing that you would use to tie someone up. But instead we did like a you know, aircraft cable, a little more invisible. It hangs, I mean, I can do this just because I installed it and I'm going to be taking care of it, but it rotates. It has kind of like a back and a front. It feels very like an industrial item to me. I think that one of the reasons I like this piece is that it's conversation with both Brian's piece, very obviously. It's a very kind of like blue, warm thing with Brian's red and orange. It also has a conversation, I think, really with Bella's piece as far as like kind of like an industrial, wearable feeling object. The kind of thing that might be like as a mask or as like a, you know, a helmet or something like that. And so Anastasia is someone in the show she has a studio nearby. But she was here earlier, but she's not here to talk to, like we've talked to so many artists on this vertical video that may or may not exist because my phone died. Yeah, this piece to me is also magic, you know? It feels like the 3D world, like when Brian was saying his work was 3D rendered, it feels like the 3D world brought into our world. And I think it claims this corner as far as like the sink, you know what I mean? And like the kind of like industrial thing, and whoever's around it brings it into this kind of like virtual reality world by it kind of being suspended and weightless in air. It also, like, I think has a nice rhyme with Georgica's work as far as like points and sharp points and stuff like that. And that work is so heavy on the shelf. And now we're going to go to the last work in the show, the seventh work, that is going to tie, thanks Zach, that's going to tie everything together. And Georgica here is the artist for the show. We're also happen to be using her phone because my phone is dead. And this work is a conversation. It's also called Screenplay. It was not the original intended work for the show, although the original intended work for the show was made last night, in the middle of the night here, which I'll ask you about and you can talk about, because this is the type of thing that's going to exist in the future, and so does that footage from that. This is also for the future. So it's about, you know, next year in the future. Yeah. But this is also about the future. It's about traveling. It's about locating people. And so to me, there's a feeling with the beeping that is like echolocation. We already talked about how Brian's sculpture feels like it's underwater. Beep, beep, like where are you, where are you? We also talk about how electricity, very present in Bella's work, and in Emmett's work, the spark is also like a kind of like a natural phenomenon. And I feel like this is like a conversation that's happening. People right away feel like they're people, even though they're screens and Raspberry Pis and texts. There's this also binary thing of the blinking. If you come in close to the thing, come here, Amelia. Let's look really close inside. If you look very close, you see this. This is a very crucial part of this artwork. It is this blinking thing, which is the blink of waiting. It is waiting to talk, and it's also a blink of listening and being present. It is the of this artwork. And it's waiting here. Look, I woke up at 5 again, all not waiting. We're waiting. How are your lemons? Very round and bright and yellow now. They're probably ready. Or do you want to read
Sure.
something?
They don't like to be told when they are or are not ready. You're right.
You're
And I
right,
regret?
and I regret. Don't get ahead of the reading.
Okay,
You have
okay.
to read it.
And I regret
having
having
spoken
spoken
for
to
them.
They can take their time. Taking their time.
This work is lit like an artwork in the show, because it is an artwork in the show.
And like theater, because these are theater actors.
And this is a screenplay.
It's a screenplay.
A script. And so script is also something that people talk about with like an electronic program, like some things are running on a program in this show. But
This is running on a
Georgica,
program.
and this is running on a program as well. So tell me a little bit about the program. I'm curious about what this Ethernet cord is doing, and just a lot of people want to know if this is, we're in a world of AI. A lot of people are curious if this is being generated on the spot or what
Yeah.
your relationship is
With the text.
with this text.
Yeah, it's not generated at all by AI. Yeah, a lot of people have asked if it was ChatGPT, which I sort of understand, and I think it has to do with like the weird grammar of it. It's like just a little bit unhuman feeling. But the program is fairly straightforward. It's just like the gist of it is just these two have to be synchronized. Like they're literally speaking to each other via this Ethernet cable, and one of them is the parent and one is the child. So basically, when you boot both of them, they register each other, and once this one starts playing, this one immediately syncs up with it, so that they're like in constant communication when they're both plugged in, and that's what the software does.
Wow. And that brings it also back. I mean, so when this was originally like an image-based thing, and now it's a conversation-based thing, I was first like very hesitant because I thought there's no text in the show. I didn't think we needed to like talk to people in their brain in that way. But ultimately when I saw it, my first thought was, oh, this has a rhyme with Bella's work that has words in it that I also didn't think about the words in the mask. Now, I didn't know that Bella's mother is a stained glass artist, and that work is really connected to her mother. I'm also wearing a t-shirt with Kaya's mother on it,
And you
and
met
also
my
I
mother
met
tonight.
your mother tonight.
This is
So
the
we're bringing it back
mother's
home in kind of a
show.
mother show. I also met Brian's mother earlier
Yeah.
today. But what I can say though is that similarly to Brian's work, this also feels like just like it's also like present. What I mean, like this is like the of the work and the present now. It's like similar to the fool or the knave or like the cursor is like a kind of thing of like letting you follow stuff. And because the conversation is so like, I think full of like a spring energy, flirty energy, New York or New Yorkington energy. This idea that like it's like there's an excitement inside of it that is like, dare I say, almost electric. But there's like an excitement in the conversation that is like it kind of like it's like a good mood thing. It's like so much could be like a downer or negative, but instead it's like an incredibly human, maybe the most human moment in like the whole show, kind of at the end as like the little treat for being in this show that also can feel quite horrific to some people as like a chamber of like scary, frightening. And so this is not a frightening conversation. It's frightening a little bit that it's disembodied and that there's no humans in it, but this is a conversation about like hope and lemons and thought and thinking of each other and being thoughtful about each other and communicating with each other. And I feel like for me it was also, like I was saying before, a particular trust exercise with Georgica that then really paid off big. It's really beautiful artwork. Yeah. And then I think you should turn the camera around on yourself, Amelia, and stand in the light. And just see what it was like to be in the show. Here, give it to me. How was it like to sit in this show?
Spent a lot of time feeling really schizophrenic with the electricity crackling behind me and this going. And I felt like I was on a spaceship. And it was very special. Felt like a conduit. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And Zach, you've been here a long time. You want to talk also about how you feel about the show? I met you just tonight.
About it was focused a lot on textures of noise and people are transitioning.
People in transition?
They're transitioning between excellence
Yeah.
or the forms of excellence.
Yeah.
It's a scale or a scope, but not a direct hit.
Thanks for letting me put you on the spot. I like transitions between forms of excellence. I really do. I'm gonna pan over here and I'm gonna end just on this. Because that's pretty fucking cool.
It looks like all of those.
And the shadows
Well, now I'm just gonna do actually a selfie because I'm ending on the selfie. If I've inconvenienced you by making you watch this, or you watch this in some way that you feel, I just want to let you know that I'm letting go, and you can stop watching this now. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed America Runs. Today is April 9th, Sunday, 2023, in New York, 64 Fulton. Be well.